How's it going, guys? Today we're going to talk about my electrical system. What's going on with it? How do I like it? And could some things be changed about it? Let's get into it. But first, let me show you where I am. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, but the wind is like just roaring out here, so I'm gonna go back inside now. The places I find, eh? Yeah, that's cold. So I'm currently in southern Idaho, and I don't know, yesterday driving through here, not through this canyon, but on my way up here, I was having some doubts because it was looking like a lot like southern Alberta, which is very hilly and then plains everywhere. But then it would transform, change into like mountains, and now I'm in like this valley, and I don't know, it's just unreal. It'll be in another video. You'll see it. You're gonna love it. So make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss it. Now, let's talk about my electrical system. All right, so I guess we'll just start off with what is my battery system right now and what am I running for like inverter, chargers, and what do I use to charge and all that stuff, you know. So the batteries I am running are 4 100 amp hour lithium batteries, and they are 12 volt. They're made by EcoWorthy, and basically what I did to find them was I went and just tried to find a good deal on batteries that reviewed pretty well, and EcoWorthy seemed to be reviewing pretty well, so I went with that, and so far I've been really happy with them. I will get more into that about things I might change, but yeah. Now, what am I running for an inverter? That is the Renogy inverter charger. It is a 2000 watt. I was thinking about going with the 3000, but at the time my power consumption wasn't really, at the time of buying, I did not see a need in a 3000 watt inverter, and the 2000 was on sale. So I thought, why not save a little money and just go with that? I think really you only need a 3000 watt inverter if you're going to do something like an air conditioner, or you want to run the microwave and maybe something else that's 1000 watts together. I don't know. Now, what am I running for charging wise? Well, of course, the inverter charger. So the inverter charger, it will charge my batteries at 65 amps per hour. That is probably the best way to charge my battery system. Well, at least the quickest, and probably the most reliable. Only because I can use my generator to do that. My generator is a 2400 watt Briggs & Stratton, nothing fancy. Got her at Canadian Tire on sale, eh? It works pretty great. I have had no issues with it. It is due for an oil change right now. I gotta do that one of these days. Probably very soon, actually. But it chugs along and keeps charging. I am having an issue with the inverter charger right now. I'm finding that it's getting different voltage readings from places, but that might be my wiring is not sufficient enough. I have 2-aught wire running to the inverter charger to the batteries, and I actually think that's not enough. I need to go up to 4-aught, and that's a future upgrade. Right now it's working fine, but I think there's some different voltage readings and stuff, and yeah, it's nothing dangerous. Don't get me wrong with that. It's just the inverter charger will read that everything is full and stop charging completely, while the solar will read it's not full yet and it keeps charging, and the shunt, which is my battery monitor up there, will read it's not full either. So I think it's something with the inverter charger, but I gotta go through it again. That's gonna be a spring project, of course. So now let's talk about my solar. My solar is 400 watts on a 40 amp MPPT charger, and I really like it. I'm able to get about 30 amps usually out of it, and during the summer that'll keep me topped up all day. Like, it works great. I love it. I do wish I had a little bit more, but we'll get into that. Now let's talk about my DC-DC charger. That's basically alternator charging from the battery of the truck to the camper. A lot of people do from factory on these campers, they'll have like the plug-in for on the trailer thing, and then you have that little wire running there and it trickle charges your battery. Those will give you like 2 amps of charging, maybe 5 amps. This one will give me about 20. It's a 40 amp though, so I'm having an issue there, and I don't know what it is. I think it might either the wiring is not sufficient enough, or the alternator on the truck is not sufficient enough at actually keeping up. Believe it or not, the alternator on this truck is only 90 amps. Yeah, this is a 2005 Cummins, and it's a 90 amp alternator, which is bonkers, but yeah, that's what I get. So alternator and probably a 60 amp DC-DC charger and some better wiring is in the future, but for now it's fine. While I'm driving, it does help. Every little bit helps, especially during the winter. During the summer months I always have it on, but yeah, every little bit helps, right? It's just free power, because while you're driving you might as well be charging, right? All right, so let's talk about what I need to power. Okay, so here's my battery monitor. It's reading right now 259 amp hours remaining, 65%, 13.1 volts, and I'm drawing right now 1.91 amp hours. So what do I need to power all the time? Well, it depends. Most of the time I'm just charging camera equipment and whatever else, like laptop. This is all camera equipment in this bag. This is my drone. I have my little charging station inside here. Yeah, that's basically all just, it's a little bit of a mess in there, sorry, but it's the best I can do. But that's all basically camera batteries and just things that need to be charged all the time, along with my drill batteries and everything like that. So all that stuff gets charged while I have the inverter on. Believe it or not, there's not a lot of 12 volt charging in this camper. The only thing that actually runs off of 12 volt is that TV and the fans to the basement, and basically the furnace and whatever else came with the camper, and then the lights also. Other than that, everything else runs off of the inverter. The reason I went with that is, well, I always find that the little 12 volt plugs, they tend to not charge as fast. I can get a lot higher voltage through something like my laptop charges at 90 watts. That's pretty great, and I can have it charged up really quick and done, and then turn off the inverter. Also, things like Starlink run off of just normal 110, so I have that like that. I know you can get a 12 volt conversion kit. I'm not gonna bother with it. It's not enough savings for me to care. Like, you can run everything off 12 volt, but then you're putting 12 volt plugs everywhere. It just seemed like a lot more work than I wanted to do. Literally, all of the plugs inside this camper, like the 110 plugs, they run off of the inverter. So I can literally just plug into a wall plug, turn the inverter on, and you have power. It's just that simple. My inverter uses 1.5 amps to change over to 110. So I don't really sweat that, not with 400 amp hours of battery. I don't care enough. It's fine. What I do sweat is Starlink. Starlink uses a lot. As you can see right now, the inverter's on. I mean, there's a couple other things running, like all my stuff charging and stuff, but like, Usually with Starlink on and everything, and once it like stabilizes, it's about 8 amps I'm drawing constantly. So that's another thing. The other thing that uses a lot of power is my furnace. That pulls about 4 amps when it's running. Given that though, the furnace only runs about for maybe 10 minutes every 30 minutes. So you don't actually use as much as you think. If it was running for an hour straight, then yeah, but it doesn't use as much power as you'd actually think. So let's talk about battery bank size. Is mine big enough? I could use 200 amp hours more, honestly. I'd be really happy with that. I say that now though, but usually I let my battery bank only get down to maybe like 30%, and then I'm charging it right back up. So with Starlink, I can get down to that 30% pretty quickly. By quickly, I mean usually a couple of days, and then I'm down to that 30%. But that's if I'm running Starlink all day for 2 days and just turning it off at night. So yeah, that can, which doesn't happen all the time. Usually I shut it off for about half the day and I'm out for a walk or something. So I can usually get probably about 4 days, and then I need to definitely charge up. Like I'm really low on battery. But if I had 600 amp hours, I'd be a lot happier. I'd feel a lot better. I think that's kind of a nice sweet spot with Starlink, is a good like 600 amp hours of battery. If you are using it a lot. If you're not using it too much, then yeah, probably. There's people that do it with 200 amp hours. You'll probably be okay. Another thing you could do too is just pick up one of those portable power stations and then just run Starlink straight off of that. Then your battery bank will basically last for way longer, because now you just have a portable power station running Starlink dedicated to it. So yeah, Starlink's a big power draw. It's really, really great, but it's a big power draw. Am I gonna upgrade my battery system to 600 amp hours anytime soon? Probably not anytime soon. It's pretty low on the priority list. I'm still pretty happy with this, so that's pretty all right. Let's talk about charging quick here. Solar, I'd like another 200 watts of solar. That would be awesome. That's pretty low on the priority list though. Like, I think the 400 does great in the summer. The extra 200 would be nice for maybe winter. But honestly, in winter, basically from November to probably about end of February, solar's basically useless in Canada. So I'm not going to put that very high on the priority list. What I would put pretty high on the priority list is probably the DC-DC charger. That's going to be my next adventure there, because I know that's a great way of charging, and it's kind of like free power while you're driving. Then again, it's also a very like, the wiring for it is not cheap. You're going to spend about as much on wire as you spent on the actual DC-DC charging unit. And if you're going to go that far into it, I wouldn't do anything smaller than a 60 amp. Because if you're driving for an hour and all you get out of it is 20 amps to your 100 amp hour battery bank, you're only charging your battery bank up 5%. Or, no, 20% in an hour of driving. If you're spending that much time driving, how much are you spending on fuel in an hour of driving though? That's the other question too. With this truck, an hour of driving is a pretty expensive generator. It's on my priority list to upgrade it because I know I do like it, but as for someone thinking of just getting a DC-DC charger and using it like a generator, you're gonna have so many hours on that engine, and it's not good to sit there and just idle the engine. That's a lot of fuel to go through on basically a V8 or a V6 generator. Like, that's not efficient at all. If you're just going to sit there and idle it, like, by all means, if you're doing an 8-hour driving trip, then yeah, the DC-DC charger is great. But if you're only doing like a 1-hour drive and you're thinking that that's going to charge up your batteries completely, it's not even close. So I would get the biggest DC-DC charger you can and get the proper wiring size. You're going to spend probably about $500 just on the DC-DC charger and the wire. And then depending on what vehicle you have, your alternator might be sufficient for it, or it might not be. That's dependent. My alternator for this truck, if I want to upgrade it to something bigger, like a 200 amp alternator, it's about $600. So just right there, that's a lot of money. And I wouldn't bother using the 40 amp DC-DC charger I have now. I'd just upgrade it to the 60 amp because you might as well get as much as you can out of that. That way, if you're out for an hour drive, at least you get 60 amps of battery. Now, my favorite way to charge, and a lot of people aren't going to like this, but the generator. It's reliable, it's easy. If you need power now, so long as you got fuel for it, you got power. So I use that probably every 2 to 3 days if I'm running Starlink, and I'm able to keep my batteries topped up, charge them. I will plug that in. It'll charge my batteries at 65 amps. Now, if you have a better inverter charger, because I went with the cheaper one. So Renogy has 2 tiers. They have their one tier there that's it's a big heavy one, and then they have one that's a bit slimmer and a bit smaller. That one actually charges at I think it's about 100 amps it'll charge at. So if you have the higher up Renogy one, or maybe even a Victron, you're going to be able to charge at a lot higher rate and charge up that battery system a lot faster. Make sure your batteries are okay with being charged at 100 amps though. That's another thing. But I'm able to charge with mine at 65 amps. I'm pretty happy with that. I can get my battery system charged up from about 30% to 100% in, how long is that? 65 amps. I think it's about 4 hours. Yeah. So 4 hours of running the generator and then you got 100% batteries. It's definitely not bad. You do that, usually what I'll do is around dinner time or something while I'm cooking, I'll run the generator until about 8 o'clock, and then I go to bed, and I just, with the generator turned off and everything, just so I don't have to have it running during the night. And yeah, it works pretty good. I'm pretty respectful with my generator. If there's a lot of people around or something and it's getting late and people kind of want to have a nice evening, I'll completely just not use it, or I'll move and just try to get away from people and just try to be respectful with it. Not because I find that those generators that are rated for their super quiet generator, yeah, that's when they're idling. Basically, when you plug it into your RV and it's a 30 amp RV and it's charging very slowly at 30 amps, it's not going to rev up at all. It doesn't really rev up that much anyways. So if you have something like this where it goes up to charging at 65 amps, it revs up pretty high. It's 900 watts going into the batteries. So it gets loud. Not unbearably loud, but it's loud enough that I feel a little embarrassed running it in a campground around a bunch of other people. So I usually try to be as respectful as I can with it. And yeah, I have used it in the Walmart parking lot, but I don't know, that's Walmart. I also think that the generator is a great solution for anyone doing this in the winter. If you're doing it without a generator, you must drive around a lot or have somewhere to plug in, because man, you ain't getting much from solar in the winter in Canada. It's really tough. And even last year when I had 200 amp hours in my old setup, which was my old truck camper from before, I was still able to, when I got to work, every couple days I would just plug in the truck camper and just charge things up quick. And then after work, I'd have a full battery for the next few days. I also didn't have Starlink then, so I didn't really have to worry about draining down my batteries really quick. Yeah, Starlink can do that. I also think I have a bit of battery anxiety too, because it gets down to 50% and I feel like I need to charge it. I feel like a lot of people get like that too. You shouldn't. It's not actually good for these batteries. They like being drawn down to 30% and then brought back up to about 80, and just staying in that range right there is kind of perfect with them. But yeah, I don't know. That's just me. Should have I maybe tried something like Victron or anything like that? I don't know. Victron's supposed to be better stuff and everything, but I think Renogy is fine too. Other than my little issue I've been having there with the voltage, but I feel like if I would have just opted for the fancier Renogy inverter charger, I think I would have had a better time with that. I also like the fact that that fancier energy inverter charger charges at like 100 amps. That's really cool. As for my batteries though, I wish I actually would have went with like at least a 200 amp battery. I know it might be tempting to go with a bunch of smaller batteries and just parallel them all together. I actually think you're gonna have less chance of failure if you go with one large battery. So you can actually get a 400 amp hour lithium battery that's just one big one. It has a price tag that looks really big, but I think if you do the math and after taxes and everything, and usually if they have a sale, you can probably get it for about the same price as if you were to go buy 4 mini batteries or whatever. I really think lithium's getting a lot cheaper and everything, and it's just getting to be a better deal as time goes by. Like, the stuff lasts like 10 years, these batteries, if not, well, let me correct that. So they'll last 10 years at full capacity, and then they're down to about 80%. Yeah, they last long. You could get probably about 15 years out of these batteries. If anything's gonna fail on them, it'll probably be the BMS by then, which is the battery management system, which is basically all their safety stuff. That's another thing too, is all my batteries are low temp cutoff. I did that because I live in Canada. I think if you're gonna buy lithium batteries today, you should just get low temp cutoff anyways. That's a better idea. That way there's a safety mechanism that has to fail before they'll charge when they're really cold. And that's the other thing too, is there's some stigma that you can't use lithium batteries when it's cold out. You can actually use them when they're cold out. You can discharge them. What you can't do is you can't charge them. So if you have solar hooked up and your battery's sitting outside and it's -10, you're gonna damage that battery. If it's -10 outside and you wanna hook up that battery to your trolling motor or something and go for a run down the lake, I don't know. The lake's probably frozen, but maybe it's like early season. You'll be just fine doing that. One thing I do wish I kind of would have tried was going to a 24 volt system. And I think if I do this again, that's something I will opt to do. They're actually easier to do than you think. You basically get a converter to convert from the 24 volt to the 12 volt for all your 12 volt devices. But since I use my inverter mostly for charging anything and running appliances and whatnot in my camper, so I think the 24 volt system would actually save you some money. You can get a DC-DC charger that converts from 12 volt to 24 volt. You can also get a inverter charger that is 24 volt, and it has less of conversion, so your wiring is actually like half the size of what you would need. Instead of needing like 4-aught wiring going to your batteries, you now only need like 2-aught. And the wiring gets a lot smaller, it gets a lot easier. I don't know, I go back and forth on that because 12 volts is very simple and there's less components to it, but there's not much more that you have to do to go to 24. There's not as much support for it. The other thing too is you can go pick up a 12 volt inverter anywhere, but I have an inverter charger, so I can't just go pick up a inverter charger anywhere. I still have to order it online. So it's not really a big deal to me for that. So yeah. But guys, I think that's it for that. That's my battery system. Am I going to change it anytime soon? Maybe in the spring. I don't know what I'm gonna do. If I dig into like this whole countertop and everything and start changing stuff there, I'll probably change something with the batteries. I might go to a little bit bigger of a bank and maybe a higher quality inverter charger, just so I can get that extra charging speed out of it, but that's about it. So I hope you learned something, and I hope this helps you out. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I can't wait to take you with me on the next one. Later, guys!